You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
This episode, we're covering the disaster/monster film Cloverfield, which is directed by Matt Reeves, released on January 18th, 2008.
Wow, 12 years ago. Feels like it's been less time than that.
Yeah. It kind of has become more of a classic movie. I guess once you get past like 10 years old, like if it still sticks around in the zeitgeist, it's kind of a classic in a way, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a classic, and it has a couple of sequels. So yeah. We'll touch on those a little bit later.
Yes.
Cloverfield was filmed in New York City, including Coney Island. It was also filmed in Los Angeles and Burbank, California. It was filmed and then edited in a home movie style that included jump cuts. Director Matt Reeves, who also directed Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War of the Planet of the Apes, is in line to direct the projected 2021 release of The Batman, which I thought was cool.
And that's the one with Robert Pattinson, isn't it?
It is.
I'm interested to see how that goes.
Me too. Although he didn't direct the sequels, Reeves was attached to those projects as an executive producer. What I found really cool, though, is he and J.J. Abrams have been good friends since they were 13 years old. J.J. Abrams actually came up with the monster idea after he and his son visited a toy store in Japan and decided that America needed a monster like Godzilla, but not Godzilla, and also that isn't King Kong, which I found really interesting.
Because Godzilla is a huge, big deal in Japan, like... Just because those movies, like, it's in the culture everywhere. And so it's like, we need something like that.
Yeah. And it's been going on for a long time. Like, there have been so many movies. And they're classic movies. And maybe on a future episode, we'll talk a bit about Godzilla and the legacy that has continued over the years with that.
That'd be cool.
Movie franchise that isn't really a franchise. Because it's just been done at different times by different directors.
Yeah.
The movie clocks in at 85 minutes, and the two sequels were spun off, although neither was filmed in the found footage type style that the original was. So, Pake, will you give us a synopsis of Cloverfield?
All right. It's not a very deep synopsis, but it gets the point across. This one that says here is, a group of friends venture deep into the streets of New York on a rescue mission during a rampaging monster attack.
I know, it's pretty incredible. It was very scary. There were moments that I was on the edge of my seat.
Yes.
To me, Cloverfield stands out because of the way it was filmed. It reminds me of those home movies of the late 80s, early 90s, complete with those jump cuts, which I think was the intent of the cinematographers, to make it look like those home movies. Anyone that still has a VCR, when you pop in a tape that someone else has recorded, you can see that if it's a tape that's been reused, some of the old footage will start to show through at some point. It also reminded me how much videography has really changed from those huge, heavy video recorders that you would put on your shoulder, and they were so heavy. And now people just record videos on their cell phone.
Yeah.
I also thought this movie was a stark contrast to our first movie that we covered, Tremors. And while there were a few humorous moments, most of the movie was pretty intense. It really was a survival story with a lot of running. And once that initial explosion occurs, it didn't really let up. For me, I love those types of movies. I love to be on the edge of my seat waiting to see what happens next.
Yeah.
Something that moves very quickly and isn't stagnant. There's no downtime. And I feel like once that monster attacked, that very first time when the power goes out and they thought it was an earthquake, boom, we were going the entire time.
Yeah.
So what did you think?
Man, Cloverfield is such a great movie. It really is. It's that perfect blend of this like found footage tension with the Godzilla-esque kind of monster destroying the city. And it's also centered around this group of characters that you just, for some reason, really cling to, and you end up really liking them, even though like you don't know a whole lot about them, but you just kind of, and it's probably because of part of the style that movie is filmed in, where it's, you kind of feel like you're already like part of that friend group and part of that circle of friends, and that, so it's really cool that they do that. But I forget how much I really love this movie, and then every time I watch it, it just like blows me away every time. I'm like, oh man, I've seen it so many times, and yet my heart is still like pounding, and I'm like, oh my god, are they gonna get out of this? Even though I know they do, or don't, some of them. But
I always look at it and think, man, why don't I watch this more?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't watch it as often as I could or should, maybe. But when I revisit it, it's like visiting an old friend, a scary old friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoy delving back into the whole story. They really didn't give us a lot of information to go on at the beginning as far as the character connections, especially with each other. We knew that Rob and Beth had a history. We knew Lily and Jason were a couple. We knew that Hud was Rob's best friend. We knew Marlena was Marlena. She was there. And she was Hud's kind of love interest, but not a love interest. They bantered really well together. It really wasn't a love interest type situation. So we had to, through the actions, especially in the first part, piece things together based on what we were given through the lens of this video camera.
Yeah.
We meet Rob and Beth. There's a flashback video at the very beginning that shows them on Coney Island. It looks like they're having a great day. Then it moves to May 23rd. We really didn't get that clear information on what happened between Rob and Beth or what their current status is, other than they're good friends. As we go on, we see little glimpses of that April 27th day come through like you would on an old recorded VCR tape.
Just such a cool style choice, because they did that to show the other side of, you're seeing all this horrible destruction and death and terrible things, and then you'd get a little glimpse of hope and light in there, just for it to be like, yeah, remember those times? Nah, that doesn't happen anymore. Let's back to the mayhem.
Exactly. I like that, back to the mayhem, because that's really what it was once the power went out. Lily and Jason, of course, Jason was Rob's brother, planned this big surprise going away party for him because he was moving to Japan. He got a really cool job as a vice president of a department, and so he was moving away. And so Lily and Jason planned this party, and Lily had given Jason one job, which was to record all of these messages. And as soon as he could, he passed that on to Hudson, which is Rob's best friend. Didn't really give him any real overview of what he was supposed to be doing, but handed the camera off and moved on. I guess he didn't realize he was taking a tape that I think meant something to Rob, because it was of that Coney Island day, and he was recording over it. Mm-hmm. And Rob was pretty upset when that happened, and he articulated that to them, basically. But
yeah.
The other character, other than Marlena, who her role was so small, was Hudson, which is Rob's best friend. And there were a lot of jokes made about how Rob was going to survive, with how Hud was going to survive, with Rob being away in Japan. And then once Lily lets it slip that Rob and Beth had slept together, Hud does exactly what no girl ever wants. He runs and tells every single person at the party.
And it was a perfect cut where it's like, but you can't tell anybody that I told you this. And then it was one of those little jump cuts where the next thing in the film that he's recording is going around, oh my God, did you hear that Rob and Beth slept together? Oh my God, did you hear? It's like, way to go, Hud. You couldn't wait 5 minutes.
Yeah, that is why you don't tell secrets like that. Because there's always one friend that is not going to keep the secret. Mm-hmm. They're going to tell everyone what's going on. Yeah. And so it's better, I think, not to say anything at all. So what did you think? As far as the characters, were there any that stood out to you?
Hud definitely stood out to me a lot. I think it was just really funny how he was kind of awkwardly obsessed with Marlena, especially at the beginning, where he's just talking to her and he's always like, I think she introduces herself to him. And he's like, oh, we've met 6 times, remember, at this and this. And she has to kind of play it off like, oh, yeah, well, you were behind the camera. So yep, there you are. Good to see you. And, where she's just not having it, but he just is relentless. And eventually, I guess he kind of does wear on her a little bit, to where they have, like you said earlier, it's not a love interest thing, or not really a romantic, thing together. But she softens up to him, is almost like he's the annoying little brother. He's like, okay, he can hang around. He's kind of cool.
I thought that too. I thought it was kind of humorous, their little relationship, because they weren't a couple like the other two that we've mentioned, but their dynamic was really fun to watch because she really didn't know what to make of him, I don't think, other than he's probably like a bunch of other guys that have hit on her before, and she's probably thinking,
Yeah.
not again. It's another guy who's just, coming on strong, and she probably wanted nothing to do with it. But over time in the movie, you're right, they do start to get along pretty well.
Mm-hmm. And Marlena, such a fun character for what she was in there. And it took me a second to recognize her, not very long, but then I was like, oh, Lizzie Kaplan. Because if anybody who has not watched it, definitely go check it out. It's on Hulu. She kills it in season 2 of Castle Rock.
Absolutely. She plays
Annie from Misery.
Yes, Annie from Misery. A younger version of Annie from Misery.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she's amazing.
Which is very different than Marlena. Very different character, but she's got the accent and the mannerisms, and she nails it, and it's incredible. But yeah.
Yeah, I think the character's full name was Annie Wilkes, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
Sounds right.
I think so. It's funny when I picture that character, I always just go back to Kathy Bates. So it's hard to switch to her, but I really love what she did on Castle Rock.
She did. She channeled a very Kathy Bates character. She did a really good job with it.
She did. Annie was such a complicated character to play.
Yeah.
And so to see her make that come across in her acting was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And I think Castle Rock is one of those underrated shows that doesn't get a lot of attention.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. She definitely killed it in that one, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And so that connection with her in this movie even is, she plays a very, sometimes some people see it as like a cookie cutter character. It was like, oh, it's the kind of edgy alternative girl who doesn't have time for anybody else. And she's, she's too cool because she's not cool, because she's her own edgy kind of person. But even that, Lizzie Kaplan takes that character in Marlena and makes her really interesting, and really, even the small little parts that she has, you can see like terror and trauma and stuff building through her. And she's a great actress just overall.
Yeah, I think so too. I look forward to seeing what she does next.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's talk about the monster.
Okay.
Because the monster in this movie was pretty incredible. They took a little bit of time to introduce us to the monster. You knew it was going to be big when you saw the Statue of Liberty head come flying across the screen. Yeah. And I guess one thing I read about it, that scene specifically, the scene itself was inspired by John Carpenter's Escape from New York poster that shows the Statue of Liberty head sitting front and center. So they didn't give us a lot at first.
Yeah.
But we did get little glimpses through HUD's camera recording. Also, when they were in Radio Shack, I'm not sure it was Radio Shack, but it reminds me of a Radio Shack.
Yeah, it was a Radio Shack style store, unnamed, generic version.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, so we saw some of that on the footage that was on the TV that showed these, I believe it was these little teeny monsters. So it wasn't just the big monster that we had to worry about. At first, you're thinking, okay, it's an earthquake. No, it's not an earthquake. It's a big monster. However, it's a big monster plus all these little teeny monsters that had kind of hitched a ride on it. And those are the ones that actually climb off and start biting people, which reminds me a lot of, zombies and how they bite and infect people. And poor Marlena, she came in the nick of time to save HUD, but she was the one who got bitten. And we see her body, what looks like her body just explodes behind that curtain. And that was just so sad. I mean, what a way to go out. I mean, she was trying to do the right thing by saving HUD, but she's the one who paid the ultimate price at the end.
Yeah.
That monster. They didn't give us those glimpses until right at the strategic moments.
Yes, which was very good. I want to take a moment to talk about the little creatures, the little monsters you were talking about. According to the official Cloverpedia and Cloverfield lore, they're called human scale parasites, or just the parasites for short.
Oh my gosh.
But they're called human scale parasites because the military notes how the parasites attack in pack coordination and prefer those enclosed spaces. So they're kind of on the scale of a human, but also their bite, whatever kind of venom or whatever that it is, causes like just a rapid expansion in like the cells and scales and stuff of a human being.
Oh,
and yeah,
that is gross.
So really terrifying. So if like the monster wasn't, and like they just aren't bad enough, like, oh, that also they do that. Like,
oh, so it's a double whammy
Yeah.
because you've got the big monster that's going to step on you,
mhm.
and you've got these little ones, these parasites that are going to bite you and cause you to explode.
Yeah.
That just doesn't sound very good at all.
Horrifying. Absolutely. I love them so much, but like love them in the way that like it makes my stomach turn, and I'm like, that is just horrifying, and I don't know what I would do in that situation.
I think you'd run.
Yeah, after they encounter them in the subway, in the tunnels, I would be terrified of every second, everywhere that I went at that point, because they can just be hiding anywhere. We even see that later where one's hiding in the building where they're saving Beth at the end of the movie, and it's just, but that is my favorite part of the whole movie. If I have to give a favorite scene, is when they run into them in the subway tunnels. It's just, they hear them kind of scuttling around on the ceiling, and so, what is that? Everybody be quiet. And they're fumbling with the camera because the light's not picking up anything. So, oh, there's night vision. And when he flips the night vision on and you see them hanging from the ceiling looking at them, best monster reveal in a movie that I can think of, probably. Like,
amazing and scary.
Oh, it's terrifying.
And terrifying. It's one of those situations, I think, that you've got the opportunity to look, but do you want to?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you see it, you're going to wish that you hadn't looked.
Yeah.
And you're going to run as fast as you can, and probably not fast enough to get away from them.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what I would have done. You like to think that you would run or you would get away from them, but I almost think I'd probably just be so terrified that I wouldn't be able to move, just because it's so scary.
Yeah. Like I said, I'd hate to put myself in that situation. That's one of those things that freaks me out about them, and I love about that in the movies, because it's one of those, like, such an alien thing where you're like, I don't know how I would react to that, because it's so insane.
Yeah, I really love the subway scene as well, because I felt like the darkness was like another character.
Yeah.
In addition to, our fearless group that we've gotten to know.
And the main monster itself, just a couple of little things about that. Just the way that it looked. I was trying to describe it as Godzilla mixed with a praying mantis mixed with a tadpole is kind of what it was, because it had this very like aquatic kind of features. Like the tail of it was almost kind of like a tadpole like tail, or like a tentacle kind of thing or something. Like it was this very aquatic, and like these like bulbous kind of like breathing things on the side of its head. And
it was like nothing I'd ever seen.
Yeah, the design was so creative and so cool of Clover, as they had dubbed him or her or whatever.
Yes, I love that. I learned that as well, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, now I can't see it as anything other than Clover.
Yeah,
because that's what I saw as that's what I read as well. So I really I like that they went in an interesting direction.
Yeah,
they didn't just create this ripoff of Godzilla or a ripoff of any other monster. It really was its own thing, and I felt like the legs were really long, and the way that the body was just different than what I had seen in other movies, and I appreciated that so much, because if you start reading and you learn, oh well, J.J. Abrams thought we should have another monster movie that's not Godzilla or King Kong, you have to think that they're probably going to do something similar, but I feel like while it's similar, it's not. The monster is, yes, it's destructive. Yes, it's terrifying, but it doesn't look the same. It's got its own unique look. Yeah.
I know there was a lot of man hours and time and creative thought put into that creature, that monster design, because it is very unique and very well done.
I also read, too, that the prototype for Clover, or the initial designs of Clover, have been used in other creatures in other movies since then.
Interesting.
Which is kind of cool. But I've never really I didn't really look to see what the movies were. I just found that really interesting, that they took a new idea and used it to kind of branch off and kind of influence other movie monsters, which I don't think is ever a bad idea, as long as you're not completely copying.
Exactly.
I'm not a real big fan of that.
No.
I want to see something new. I want to see something that's going to scare me. And this one did a good job of making me very nervous on the edge of my seat the whole time. So I appreciated that.
Yes. Another thing about Clover that they didn't really touch on, but you see, I guess, spoilers abound, whatever. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, hopefully you have watched the whole movie and we can jump around on you. That, at the end, whenever Clover takes down the helicopter, I mean, it leaps off the ground just right at it. But you never really see that ability throughout the movie. That it's got these long legs, like you said, to where maybe it's got quite a leaping ability to it that it just never uses. Unless, like, I guess in that instance, they've bombed the hell out of it to where it was just kind of an escape mechanism. I don't think it was jumping at the helicopter. The helicopter was in its way as it was trying to escape the bombs.
Absolutely. I think, too, that jumping took me to another movie that I know we both like, which is Jurassic Park. Mm-hmm. It reminded me of velociraptors jumping and leaping, trying to get people.
Yeah.
That reminded me of a very dinosaur, velociraptor type action.
Mm-hmm.
Of what they will do to try to get to their prey. And I feel like you're right. Clover was trying to probably get away from the bombs. But I also wonder, I feel like she's probably still saw that helicopter too and was like, oh, 2 birds, 1 stone, let's do it.
Very possible, yeah. Because it doesn't have any qualms about taking out people. Because, I mean,
not at all.
HUD at the end, R.I.P. HUD, you were a great commentator throughout this movie. But yeah, I mean, it stands over him and stares him down with this look like, yeah, this is about to happen. Sorry. Too bad.
They didn't really show us, but from what I read, the monster Clover actually bit him in half.
I definitely saw his arm come off in a quick little flash.
Yeah.
Because that's how the camera falls to the ground. Because he's got the camera in his arm, and then you see this like limb snap and blood, and then the camera comes free.
Yeah. Just not a way that you'd want to go out.
No.
And the fact that he kept that camera the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why did he do that? Was he looking to sell it to a news station that probably wouldn't exist after all this madness?
Right? I don't know.
I'm not really sure.
I like that mentality, though, because he was like, who knows how bad this is going to get and what's really happening. He was like, but people need to see what was going on from the ground floor, not like what news is showing, not what helicopters, but like, here's actual footage of like, if I make it out of this or if somebody finds this, if we don't, here's the civilians' perspective of here's what was going on in the streets of New York that night.
Exactly. I like that too. Reminds me of a couple other movies too where recording footage as things were happening was something that was important to some of the characters because they felt like we need to see the real deal.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, we need to see the real deal of what's actually happening. And I think that's important. We all want to know the real story, not just what we're being fed. So I think it's really important to see those things.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about Rob and Beth, which I alluded to a little bit. They have this complicated relationship. We learned that what they did as 2 very, very close friends, they had a night of passion, I guess, and then went off to Coney Island. And then we don't really know what happened in between that and the party, other than Rob really hadn't been talking to her. Whether it's because he was moving to Japan or for whatever reason. But it was pretty obvious that he was really crushed when she came to the party with Travis.
Mm-hmm.
But I also found it kind of interesting that once things start rolling, she called him to rescue her.
Yeah.
And he was willing to do anything. He was going to run it headfirst into danger. He was going to go and try to rescue her without any hesitation, not knowing if she was going to be alive or dead by the time he got there, like he was a knight in shining armor.
Mm-hmm.
I found that really telling that though their relationship was complicated, they obviously still really cared about each other a lot. So he goes off and drags his friends along to go and rescue her, even though it meant going completely into danger.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to go.
I don't know, partially, I mean, I guess maybe it's just because they didn't want Rob to run off on his own and definitely die.
Yeah.
So there's that. But I don't know, because I feel like, they would have just gone with the military and got out of there. Like, I don't know, maybe there is this like little sense of adventure that's in all of them. Because like Marlena had no reason to stay with them, yet she does.
Exactly. Marlena was a fun character who just did not. I know we've talked about her a little bit. She was such a fun character who just didn't have enough time. I wish we could have seen more of her because I just think that the way she looked at things would have been a benefit to the group because she wasn't really emotionally tied to anyone.
Yeah.
So she could be more objective. Whereas the others, Rob, his brother Jason, Jason's girlfriend, they were all like this close group. And I feel like Marlena wasn't part of that really close group. So she could be a bit more objective.
Yeah.
In what she said to everyone and what her recommendations were. So I found it really interesting. It's too bad that we didn't get to see enough of her.
Yeah.
So did you have any more notes?
Oh, yeah. I've got a few more.
Excellent.
Kind of points to talk about. Let's see. My main ones, let's see, the destruction and stuff just on its own, I think was really cool. Some of the stuff. We talked about that initial earthquake is kind of what they thought it was. And I can't help but smile. I was literally just watching the movie and like you see that just and all the lights kind of go out and things are shaking. And because I've seen this movie countless times, I just start grinning because I'm like, here we go.
It's about to get real fast.
And I totally understand, by the way, when that happens and the first thing everybody does is go straight to the roof to look at it and see what's going on. I don't know if that's like ingrained in most people or if that's just me being here in the South. I don't know. Because we have a lot of tornadoes and we have a lot of really bad weather that come through here at different times. And it's always been ingrained in me when like terrible stuff is going on outside and the sirens are going off. Instead of taking cover, my first instinct is always to walk outside and check it out and see what's going on. Like that's just ingrained in a lot of people. So I totally get that. I would be, of course, like, we don't know what's going on. And like they're talking about it on the news. Like, oh my God, it's really close to us. Let's go see. Like, I get it.
Curiosity. We all are very curious. I remember I live in the Northeast and we don't get a lot of crazy weather except for hurricanes now and then. But I remember when I bought my house, it was about a month after, I heard this huge kaboom and loud noises. And I went outside to see, well, what the heck's going on? We had a small earthquake about 30 miles north of where I live. But I like to think, too, like you do, like, I don't think I would want to go to the roof. I'd first go to the window and look out. And then I'd probably want to get to stable ground because if it's an earthquake or they think it is, why would you want to go upstairs? The building could collapse at any second.
It's a good vantage point, though.
Yeah. You could see everything. A great view of the monster if they had shown us.
Yeah, which we did get some really cool view while they're up there. I mean, they're looking at the tanker and they're looking at stuff. But then when the building explodes in the distance, and then all of a sudden all of this debris and everything is flying at them. Really cool effect. Well, that's when they start, oh, we should get out of here. Like, let's go downstairs. But that was really intense and really cool. And then they all get down to the street level. And that's when the Empire State Building just kind of crumbles and they watch it from a distance, which that was a really cool effect. And then, yeah, right before that, the head of the Statue of Liberty, like you said, just comes flying through, bouncing off of walls and buildings and cars. And
like it's a soccer ball.
Yeah, slides to a stop. And of course, even in 2008, what's the first thing that most people did when that happened? They ran up to it and started taking pictures and taking selfies.
Because that's what people
videos.
do.
Yeah.
That's what people do. The funny thing about that scene is they made it in the initial trailer. The Statue of Liberty head was smaller than what we saw in the movie. However, they realized that, or at least they decided it was too small. So they made it 50% bigger. But a friend of mine who actually has been to New York a bunch of times and actually been in the Statue of Liberty said that it was still too small to be the actual head. Whenever there's a disaster movie that's filmed in New York, the Statue of Liberty, the Empire State Building, they always get demolished, blown up, knocked down. It always happens.
Yeah.
I love those types of effects. Like, I want to see what they do in the movie with those.
Just the bridge scene. Real quick, because you finally feel like, oh, we're getting some, like they're getting a break and they're going to make it across. And then just like out of nowhere, bam, tail whip and Jason's gone. And we're right back to running for their lives.
Yes. Again. This is the perfect run for your lives movie.
Yes.
To be honest, it really is.
It's great. Yes. I love it. I don't know if you have anything else, but I've got some Easter eggs and fun things and stuff that I noticed that were really cool.
All right. Well, I've got a few things. One thing I uncovered through this, and I remembered it kind of, but in rereading about it and looking deeper into the movie, I learned that there was a lot of secrecy around this film.
Mm-hmm.
From the casting to the promotion, it was a secret. When they were casting the movie, there was no script. They didn't want the script to be sent to candidates. So they used scripts from J.J. Abrams' 2 shows that he had, Alias and Lost. Mm-hmm. Those were the scripts that they used because they didn't want even anyone who tried out for the role to have any information about it, so they couldn't talk about it.
Yeah.
Because it was a big, big secret. Also, they created this teaser trailer, and they released the teaser without a title, and it incited all of this speculation from people who saw it. Well, is this a new Godzilla movie? Is this something for H.P. Lovecraft? Is it tied to that? And so there was a lot of discussion. There were folks on message boards that were digging really deep into this, which I thought was really cool. And there were a couple of speculated titles, including Parasite, which kind of ties back into what you were talking about earlier with the little parasites. Colossus was another one, and Monstrous. Mm-hmm. They did release a trailer a little bit later, which was closer to the release date, that had the title, and while it didn't answer questions, it kind of showed a little bit more of what was going to be happening. Yeah. Something also that I found was funny is this was still in the heyday of MySpace, which was a social media platform that I know it still exists.
But does it really?
Exactly. Well, the cool thing is they used MySpace as a way to promote the movie by each of the characters had their own MySpace page. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't the actors, it was actually in the characters' names. A quick search, I realized that those pages still exist out there. Like, they're still out there. They used to have blogs and different things on them, but now it's mostly just photos, and they're still connected to each other as friends, or I can't even remember.
Yeah, I'm friends. I remember having my, top 8.
Yes, the top 8. And I think it was Tom was always in your top 8 or something. Mm-hmm. As soon as you joined, Tom was in your top 8. I'll never forget the picture. Never forget it. And one of the other things that they had was a 4-chapter manga series by Yoshiki Togawa titled Cloverfield Kishin. And it focuses on 2 Japanese high school students and the events before the Chuai incident, as well as being under siege by the monster before it headed to New York City. So I guess it had some things to do over there first. So it was a prequel series. So I feel like they did a lot of these they put a lot into it in different ways.
Oh yeah, and one of the biggest things that they put into it was they had an entire ARG, or alternate reality game, that you would find different things and different clues and hints online that would kind of, and the MySpace profiles were definitely part of that. And it was all where you could kind of dig in and see all these little things going on. But even they had all these fictitious companies and different things that were all part of this ARG. One of them being Tagrato, which is like a NASA kind of thing, the satellites and space exploration, which one of the most fun things that people know is at the very end of the movie when it cuts back to Beth and Rob at Coney Island. And he has the camera kind of sitting over the water for a while before he turns it back on them. If you're paying attention, you can see something falling out of the sky and into the water in the distance. And a lot of people speculated that was the monster, but then other people have dug even closer and done frame by frame look at it, and it is the Chimpanzee 3 satellite from Tagroto. And which they then assume is what awakened the monster from under the sea or whatever,
It's always something.
But it's
always something crashing or, having a connection. That is really cool.
Yeah, and at the party, Jason is wearing a Slusho shirt, which Slusho is a, slushy kind of different, it's a company that is all part of the ARG, and it's this, fun drink company kind of thing. And so for Cloverfield events and stuff, they've brought the Slusho truck out to different events for the different movies and all of these different things. So all of these little things that are part of the ARG it's really fun to see all of those even go in. There's like another like scientific company that unfortunately I can't think of the name, and I didn't write it down, and I should have. But that even like ties into the sequels, where one of the main characters from 10 Cloverfield Lane, the next movie, worked for that company. And so it all ties together through all of these little things that like only if you're like a super fan and you've done your research online, or you're like us and looking into it later, that you see all these like weird little connections that really have no meaning, but it's fun. And it's just a fun little game to play to find all these little, and people still try to check into the ARG to see what's coming next for future movies. Are they still trying to do Cloverfield stuff, and what's coming? We're looking for clues.
I was wondering about that myself, because there seem to be these conflicting reports about will there be another movie? Won't there be another movie? And there really isn't a lot of information other than the back and forth. And I think the latest stuff came out in 2018, where I believe J.J. Abrams said, yes, there's going to be another one. But then nothing has really been said since then.
Yeah, not since then. So I'll keep my fingers crossed. I'll hope for it. And then I guess before we get into sequel stuff and everything, one more little, not really Easter egg, but just kind of fun thing I noticed is the casting of this movie. There is a lot of, mainly just in the party, the beginning, because that's where you see the most extra people. There's a lot of familiar faces in there, most of them before they were really known for other stuff, but it was really cool to be like, oh man, they're that person and that person and that person.
I like that too.
And so I have some of the most notable ones that I picked out. Theo Rossi.
Yes.
Who is known from Sons of Anarchy. He plays Juice in Sons of Anarchy, and he's also one of the main villains and most amazing parts of the Luke Cage series on Netflix.
So much fun, that
plays
series.
Shades on Luke Cage, and he's awesome there. Baron Vaughn was in there, which he's a stand-up comedian, and he's done little bit parts in a lot of different stuff. And he's also the voice of Tom Servo in the reboot of Mystery Science Theater 3000 that they did for Netflix with Jonah Ray. And so that's cool. Let's see. Ryan Key, the lead singer of the band Yellow Card, is seen sitting at the bar.
Oh my goodness.
Hanging out, drinking, doing what he does with it. They knew some important people. They knew some cool people in their apartment in New York.
I think they did, for sure.
And then Charlene Yee, which is another fun comedian who's done a couple of little like bit parts and stuff on a lot of different things, including the latest season of Good Girls. She plays a kind of pivotal but quick role that's really cool. But yeah. And then I think the most important, of course, is Travis, who Beth shows up with at the party, which is Ben Feldman.
Ben Feldman.
And I know him most notably as Jonah from Superstore, because I'm a big Superstore fan. So it's cool to see him there with that.
He actually, though, too, was on Silicon Valley with TJ Miller.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And this was TJ Miller's, I think, first role, really, before he went on to do some other really, really cool stuff.
It was. It's pretty interesting to see, knowing how successful he's been, especially with Silicon Valley. And he's also played Weasel in 2 of the Deadpool movies.
Yes.
Given how successful he's been.
Oh, yeah.
It's cool to go back to seeing his actual first role. Now, if you think about it, we really didn't see him.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of his voice. You don't see him a lot.
If I remember correctly, he actually did film. Like, it wasn't a voiceover. He did film a lot of what was happening, and they did use it.
That's really cool.
Even if he didn't film all of it, at least.
Mm-hmm.
I think it actually helps make his performance more believable.
Yeah.
Knowing that. Because he can relate to actually, holding the camcorder, running around, and everything.
Yeah.
I know that the film style is not necessarily everyone's favorite.
Yeah. No.
It's actually been called La Shakily Queasy Cam. Because it makes you uneasy while you're watching it. It's almost like you get motion sickness from watching it. So I think, though, it's definitely still something. It's such a special movie. There's just so many great things about it that we've talked about here. And so I hope more folks will go and check it out. It's only been out, for 12 years, but still, it's really kind of a classic. I think we've determined that if past 10 years, it's a classic.
I think so.
At least in our terms.
Mm-hmm. Past 10 years and people are still talking about it, and it gets referenced a lot, and which I think it really is, because, a lot of people still like to talk about Cloverfield and how unique it is.
Definitely. It's cool that, J.J. Abrams and Matt Reeves collaborated on this. They also went on together to create the TV series Felicity, which was really popular at the time. And so it's cool, that they have this great friendship and have been able to work together and create these opportunities to work together, because I think that's special to be able to go to work and have people you like around you all day. So I think that's kind of neat. Let's talk a little bit about the sequels.
All right.
So 10 Cloverfield Lane, which I think is the more well-known sequel, was released in theaters about 8 years after the original, so in 2016. The cool thing about what they've done with the Cloverfield sequels is it's not that they're going to a source material to try to build these. They're taking stories and connecting them to Cloverfield universe.
Yeah.
So there was a script called The Cellar, and it was taken and adapted to fit in the Cloverfield universe.
Yeah.
Starred Mary Elizabeth Winstead and John Goodman.
Oh, my Ramona Flowers. I love Mary Elizabeth Winstead. She's great. I just have to nerd out on that when you mention her. I'm like, ah.
The movie focuses on a young woman who's being held in an underground bunker by a man who insists that you can't go up to the surface of the earth because it's uninhabitable.
Mm-hmm.
The story, it wasn't filmed in that jump cut style, like found footage style. So it was more of just it was filmed like generally. But it was a very creepy movie.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of tension because most of it takes place like in this underground bunker, and so there's still that very like mysterious kind of not trusting certain characters and all this tension that's going on. And I think it's an incredible movie on its own, for sure.
Me too. I think that for all the differences, there's still that fear, and you wonder, am I supposed to be afraid of the people in the bunker, or am I supposed to be afraid of what's above the ground? And not really knowing all of the answers. You can relate to her being in there wondering, oh, well, I don't know if what he's telling me is true, or if it isn't. What if what if it is true? And the dynamic between the two characters, and also there was an additional character that was in the bunker as well.
John Goodman gives an incredible performance in that, by the way. Just want to throw that out there because I can nerd out about Mary Elizabeth Winstead, but John Goodman's role in 10 Cloverfield Lane might be one of the best he's ever done.
It was definitely it was incredible. I mean, who knew that he could play that part?
Yeah.
Who knew he could play creepy like that? Because he's used to being like the dad on the Roseanne show, and everyone knows him from that. And he's been in a couple of other movies as well that he's played, different roles than this. But he does creepy so well.
Definitely. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch Cloverfield Lane now. Dang.
Maybe we'll cover it on a future
Maybe. We might have to.
We might have to, because I think you're right, and I feel like that's one that we could delve a lot deeper into.
Mm-hmm.
The second sequel, which was the Cloverfield Paradox, I like to call it the Netflix surprise, because we didn't know it was coming, and then all of a sudden it was on Netflix. Oh, look, there's a new Cloverfield movie. No one really talked about it, but judging by all of the research that I did for Cloverfield, I'm not surprised that no one knew, because they are so secretive about things. You just never know what's really going on.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you mentioned it when you brought up 10 Cloverfield Lane, that it was adapted from a story called The Cellar. That's what J.J. Abrams does with these movies, with these Cloverfield movies. That's why they're so secretive, because nobody knows if he's working on a Cloverfield movie, because he doesn't work on a Cloverfield movie. He takes another script that somebody else wrote and then adapts it and finds a way to turn it into a Cloverfield story. And so the same thing was done with Cloverfield Paradox, where it was something else, I think, called the God Particle.
Yes.
That somebody else was working on, and then I guess they couldn't find the right way to get off the ground. And J.J. Abrams said, hey, look, I'll take it. I'm putting it into the Cloverfield universe, and I'm going to make some tweaks here and there. But I like this story. I don't want to make this part of my stories.
And he does it so well. It wasn't as popular, obviously, as the original or 10 Cloverfield Lane, but I think it had some good moments. It was set in 2028, And it's about some astronauts who were stranded on their ship, Cloverfield Station, which is the name of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
They had run this particle accelerator test that went awry, and they become stranded in an alternate universe. And their test that they did actually is a catalyst to open up these other realities on Earth, which causes the supernatural attacks.
Which explains, explains what happens in Cloverfield and in 10 Cloverfield Lane, and the weird things are happening. Like, oh, now we see where these monsters or whatever came from. Is it's because of what happened during the Cloverfield Paradox.
Exactly. And you know what? I think about it. I just wonder, does someone out there have a story that J.J. Abrams can connect to the Cloverfield universe and make his next movie?
I don't know. I remember when Overlord came out a couple of years ago, there was a lot of talk that was going to be the next Cloverfield movie, because I think J.J. Abrams had played with it a little bit, and then they ended up making it its own thing. But there was a very strong possibility that one was going to be adapted into a Cloverfield movie for a little bit. I'm kind of sad that it didn't, but you know what? I think it turned out. I mean, I haven't seen it. I need to check that one out.
I haven't seen it either.
So that might be something to look into. But I've heard that it did really well on its own as something. So that's cool. I know he did say, J.J. Abrams has said back in 2018 that he was going to do another Cloverfield movie, a fourth movie. That again, we haven't heard anything up to this point. But with COVID and everything going on, a lot of stuff is kind of stuck in post-production or even pre-production hell right now. So, but he did say that if he does a fourth movie, he does want it to be more of a true sequel to this original Cloverfield movie. So that would be really cool if he's still stuck with that route.
I would love that, because I want to see, because you get all these questions. Did Lily survive? Because she was on a chopper. And she wasn't on the same chopper as anyone else, so we don't know. And I mean, we assume that Rob and Beth died in the cave-in at that little bridge. But did they? I don't know.
We don't know. Now, we do know at the very end, because I stuck around and waited. I watched all the way through the entire credit sequence after Cloverfield when I watched it for this prep. And at the very end of the credits, there's a little voice over an intercom, over a radio that comes in and says, "Help us, please. It's still alive." Now, the "it's still alive" part is reversed audio, so people had to go in and take that audio, flip it back over, and find out. But if you play around, it's almost kind of part of the ARG in a way. Like they love teasing little things. But if you go in and take that audio and flip it and look at it, it sounds like a soldier who is down there in New York at that moment, freaking out, going, "It's still alive."
So all the bombs didn't work. They always try to bomb it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same with some of the other movies that there's a large, like, extraterrestrial or monster threat. They always try to bomb things, and it just doesn't always work. You can hope for the best, but who knows?
Yeah.
So I'm interested. I really hope that they do make a sequel, and I hope that it is a sequel that is more true to the original.
Yeah.
Because I want to see that. I want to see, it doesn't have to be New York City. It can be somewhere else. I want to see that. I definitely do.
Definitely.
So, we've covered almost everything. There were fun little interpersonal conversations with different characters that I wanted to point out just a little bit. I loved when Marlena, especially, like Marlena and Hud. Yeah. After Marlena had gotten attacked by the parasite. Now that I know that, I'm always going to call it a parasite. She asks Hud, "You tell me, how does it look?" And Hud says, "It looks like it hurts." And Marlena says, "What do you mean? Are you saying this isn't attractive at all?" I feel like that represents her character like so well. That's like a sentence that really hits it, because she was just such a fun character. Quirky, fun, edgy character, and I feel like her comeback in that statement was pretty great.
Yeah.
I also liked Hud's comment about Beth living in Midtown. And he says, "Midtown is that way. You know what else is that way? Some horrific shit."
Yeah.
It's like, yep, Hud, always bringing, the fun. He was really, if we had any comic relief, it was really him. Yeah, and his interactions with Marlena. I feel like that was the only thing that was comical because everything else was just so serious the entire time.
And it's believable because he seemed like that kind of guy that when he's nervous and scared, because I'm the same way. If I'm uncomfortable to a certain point, what am I going to do? I'm going to try to break the tension by making jokes. And so I totally get that he's that same person. And they even say this, like, why don't you shut up? Like, why are you talking about this? This is not the time to be talking about this. And he just, when they're in the stairwell going to get Beth, and he goes, because I have to talk about something. If I'm not talking about something, I'm just going to be shitting my pants here in the stairwell. Like,
that was so funny. It really was. I just, There was also another conversation that they had. How can you forget this? When they were in the subway tunnels and HUD just, magically remembers. Do you guys remember a couple years ago when that guy was lighting homeless people on fire in the subways? And Rob says, Jesus, HUD, maybe not the best time for this conversation down here. And HUD says, right? And then there's this awkward silence. And then he says, I just can't stop thinking how scary it'd be if a flaming homeless guy came running. It's like, you're in a subway tunnel. And how does this possibly seem like it's okay to tell this? Like, it's not okay.
Again, it's just that nervous, cracking jokes. He doesn't know what else to do. And probably once they run into the parasites down there, I'm sure he wished it was a flaming homeless man. It would probably have been a lot less scary.
Yeah, I think so for sure. I think he was really just trying to create some levity in that terribly creepy and scary situation.
Oh, yeah.
They'd gone down into the subway. They were able to escape from, the big monster without really realizing, even though I think they kind of knew that those little monsters were going to be just as scary, but in a different way.
Yeah.
So, were there any other quotes that you liked particularly?
There were a few, and most of them were HUD and his, because I related so well to that character that like a lot of that comic relief and jokiness is what I relate to. So back at the party, we'll go into some lighter mode. Back into the party when HUD is telling Marlena about Rob and Beth hooking up. It's like, isn't that crazy? What do you think about that? And she just makes this offhanded comment. It's like, maybe it was like a going away present. And he responds, he's just like, yeah, wait, were we supposed to get presents? And it's just this like little joke that I thought was hilarious.
Because he was clueless.
Yeah.
He was clueless. He was his best friend, but he was still clueless.
Yeah. And when they're going to rescue Beth and he's freaking out, I was like, that's not her place. That's not her building. Tell me that's not her building. That's her building. Oh, God, And it's like, what are we supposed to do? And he comes up, what if we go up the other building and then find a way to jump over onto the roof of the building that's collapsed? And he's and they go, that's not a bad idea. And they go. And he's like, no, I take it back. I take it back. And then the next line he goes, no one listens to me ever. But now, of course, they listen to me.
He was just hilarious. He just, he reacted in a way that you think that you probably would, like you said. Like, you'd just be trying to survive in the situation. And I think I really think that comes through in the way that he is. It really comes across in his character. There was one other really cool quote that I liked, which was not really funny, but kind of interesting. And that was Jason was talking to his brother about Beth I believe it was out on the fire escape. And he said, you're not good enough for her. That's it. That's fact. That's science. Beth McIntyre is like from a whole other planet, man. She's beautiful. She's charming. And I love you. But let's face it, you're kind of a douchebag, and going to Japan is not going to fix that. And I really like that exchange between the two of them, because not long after we see Jason bite the dust. And it was just cool to see that brother-to-brother connection. You really didn't get to see that. There was just so much running. So it's hard to have those little moments.
I had one other quote as well that was not on the funny side of things. And I don't know, it's just one of those... It's a small little moment, but it just really reverberated within me when I heard it. And it was after they leave the little convenience store that they all ducked into after Empire State Building had collapsed and the dust had flown through everything. And they go out and they find Marlena just covered in dust and, bruised up from everybody running and stuff collapsing. And she just has this gaunt, like I saw a ghost look on her face. And Lily takes her and they're sitting down on the curb, whatever. It's like, okay, I think we're ready to go. And then Marlena sits up and just like almost emotionlessly, she just says, it was eating people. It was eating everyone. And it was just this, like, she had seen some shit and the trauma set with her for most of the rest of her life in that movie.
Yeah, that scene was pretty, I think, telling. Like, she probably saw more of the monster than anyone else at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And that really resonated with her. And the others may not have even believed.
Yeah.
You know, Lily may not have even believed that what she was saying was true. However, it was true.
Yeah.
And the monster did eat people and did a lot of damage in New York, for sure. So, Pake, we have gotten our first bit of feedback.
Yay!
It's great. It's from our friend Steve.
Steve Brown.
He wanted to share what he thought about Cloverfield.
All right.
So let's go ahead and give it a listen.
Wait, were we supposed to get presents? Best line ever. Hey, Pake and Daphne, this is Steve. I'm watching Cloverfield right now, and I forgot about that line at the beginning of the movie. All right. Another thing I forgot about as I'm watching it is like halfway through, or not, maybe a little more than halfway through, HUD turns the camera back on himself after the whole attack by the whatever those things were falling off the creature in the subway tunnel. He turns the thing on himself, and that subway tunnel attack, man, that was tense and quick. And we see Rob fighting Marlena, saves HUD, and HUD just basically just keeps filming. So, okay, driverless, horse-drawn carriage, creepiest thing ever. What is that? Something else, also terrible. Well, that really was a good movie. I remember watching it the first time and not knowing a lot of what was going on, and then having to, like, the second time I watched it, I think was when I started looking at the trivia and started learning some things about it. And yeah, it's just a really good movie. It's there's a lot of things that you miss, and I have never yet caught the object falling into the water in the very last scene. That is, I know it's there because I've caught it when I've paused and backed it up and then played it and really looked for it. I've never, on just a casual watch like this one, noticed it. I didn't this time either. But I really, really loved, and I don't think I have ever thought of this before, but I love the intercutting of the present day footage back to that day of the couple's day on Coney Island that they had, that was such a great day, and then ends the movie. That this was a good day. This was a good day. So can't wait to hear you guys' thoughts. I know I won't. You won't be able to react to this on your recording, but can't wait for the rest of the podcast. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. And yeah, little do you know, we can get it and react. We've got it here. So awesome. With your beautiful musical accompaniment to that input as well. That was great. I guess that's the credit to the movie playing. You jumped right into it, which is awesome.
Yeah, loved it, Steve. Thank you so much for sending that in.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it.
And for anybody else listening, if you want to send in something like that, like Steve just did, voicemail is a great way to do that. We love to hear your voices, love to hear what you thought about stuff. And the best way to do that is record a voice memo on your phone if you're an Apple iPhone user. I don't know if other phones have a similar situation. I'm sure they do. I don't know. But at least with an iPhone, I know I can. Just record a voice memo, and then you can email that voice memo to us, runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com. And then, we can play it right here on the show, listen to it, react to it, and talk back to you. So thanks.
Yeah, send those in, guys. We're looking forward to hearing what you have to say about movies that we're going to be covering in the future. We are going to end the podcast with our ranking for this movie.
All right.
For me, this movie brought just about everything. There were only a few things that I didn't like, just mostly some unanswered questions. But I think overall, I would definitely give it an 8.
All right. And I think that's what I gave Tremors last week. It was an 8. And so I was like, why do we have to go off at such a big start? Because now I got to compare everything to Tremors.
Yes, I know. I know it's hard.
Uh-huh.
We all know how you feel about Tremors.
Mm-hmm. But I had to be very fair and very assess of how do I feel watching this and how do I stuff. And I think there's really no complaints that I have about this movie either, except for the CGI maybe doesn't hold up as well in some of the places, but I can look past that because it's a product of the times and you roll with it. So I'm actually right there with you, and I think I gave it an 8 as well. So
excellent.
As far as the entertainment level of watching it as it I think is the same entertainment that I have. It's another one of my favorites.
I know. Maybe we need to start picking some that aren't our favorites, so
right?
The scores will be a little lower. It's hard when you pick 2 really good ones to start off. And the next one, folks, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's another really, really good one, and it's one that we both love, and we'll definitely nerd out over in our next episode.
Yeah, I'm not going to make any promises right now, but I think even though Tremors is still going to be my guilty pleasure favorite, score-wise, I think the next one may end up higher. I think there's a very good chance of that.
Yeah. And like you did with Tremors, I'm going to have to disconnect myself emotionally from my feels about the next movie because it's my favorite series ever. So
nice.
It's going to be tough. I might need some pointers on that. And with that, we have reached the end.
All right.
To submit your theories, feedback, questions, or comments, you can go to our Facebook page at Run For Your Lives Podcast. You can email us at runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com or find us on Instagram at Run For Your Lives Podcast.
All right.
Thanks for listening, everyone. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And if you have to run, you better run for your lives.
Good night.